Welcome to Tea Time with Shaylee and Amber. I'm Shaylee Evans, and I'm a life coach for pets and their people. I'm a truth seeker, and it's my passion to empower others and to give animals a voice along the way.
I'm Amber Leidick, and I've been a performance horse trainer focused on behavioral issues for over 20 years. My current passion is creating impactful in-person and online events and collaborating with professionals to be on the leading edge of positive change in the horse industry.
We are two friends invested in theta healing, belief system work, animal communication, and any resources that benefit human-animal partnerships. So turn up the volume and let's dive into the Great Awakening, brought to you by our horses. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are super excited to be talking with Yasmin Stuart. Thanks for joining us, Yasmin.
Thank you so much for having me on. When you messaged me and invited me on, I did just do like a little low-key fangirl and was like, dreams made. So thank you. Really, really stoked to be here.
I have to say, anytime anyone
that's so awesome.
says that about like coming on this podcast, I'm like, really? It still confuses me, but I'm so flattered, and I'm happy that people get excited to come chat with us.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I listen to you guys in the car, and it's amazing how you always get an episode when you need it most, which I think is really fun. And also, when I'm driving between clients, it's also that thing where it can be quite a lonely place. So then to hear two people or three people chatting from literally the other side of the world and it being like, oh, I feel seen in so many ways. It's amazing. I really love it.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, you are an equine physio, but for people who might not know what you're up to, because I feel like you're so much more than that. Like that might be like your little title on Facebook, but I feel like you do so many amazing things and you have energy all entwined everywhere. Like you just posted this. I loved this thing that you posted the other day where you were kind of just like rocking back with the horse, like doing like gentle cervical things. And so for people who might not know your work or what you do, can you just explain a little bit about that? And then we'll get into the fun part of the conversation.
Yeah, so I'm an equine physiotherapist. So my original training way back when was a diploma in equine physiotherapy and rehabilitation. And then as my career has sort of progressed, all of these different layers and sort of intertwinings have presented themselves. So I would say on the bare bones of my training, it's equine physiotherapy in the context of how is the horse's body presenting and how can we help this horse to move and feel better in their movement. But then in and around that, what I actually find really fascinating and is certainly the thing that I'm finding more and more now is the relationship piece in and around equine physiotherapy. So this was, highlighted to me in Celeste's work and in balance through movement method and nerve release. And then more getting to the bones without diagnosing because of laws and things, but the bones of, this is interesting how your horse is presenting with this postural presentation. And it fascinates me that your horse is presenting with a specific type of posture. And actually, the way you talk about your horse, the way you move around your horse, all leads them to find this posture and this way of going. And then that had me kind of stepping away from the traditional physiotherapy side of that more because I thought if there are relationship issues in inverted commas going on here, and the way the owner is showing up for their horse and the way they are interacting with each other on a relationship level, if that is problematic or if that could be helped, then how can I come and be like, oh yeah, lead your horse over poles 4 times a week for 10 minutes a session and they'll get better, because they just won't. And then that kind of led to a little bit of a crisis of me being a bit like, well, I can't be taking money off of people to fix an issue that isn't an issue that or isn't the issue that can't be fixed in the way in which I've been taught to fix it. So this is kind of where I have found this slightly philosophical, partially evidence-based, but more, it's like, how do you energetically show up around your horse? How are you talking about your horse? How are you embodying the time that you spend with your horse, and how is that implicating how your horse looks, how they look, and how your horse moves, how they move? And then what can we do about that? Which I think was like a nice 5 minute waffle of me essentially going, I do stuff and things and I'm still trying to work it out.
It makes me feel so
You,
so comforted and seen when every single person we interview, it's like what it all comes back down to, like, I just do what I need to do in the moment, and
yeah.
like it's impossible to like stick a label on it.
Yeah, and I think it's like every time I'm like, ha, I have it. And then something happens and I'm like, shoot, don't have it. Don't have it. I think really actually, Shaylee, this relates to you did a session with one of my clients and you were talking about the energetic link that they had with their horse, and their horse had some pretty significant things going on. And it was wild how when you highlighted that to her, and then she started to look at things differently, and her horse just kind of got better. And it made me do like an about turn with so many people that I had worked with in the past. And now it also still comes with me today when I'm meeting people and they're talking about issues. And I'm like, is this like a thing, or is this like an energetic thing, or is this all of the above? And where are we going to go with this? How can I be helpful in this situation? So yeah, it's interesting how with every little filter or layer that you have, with every little piece of information you pick up, you can start to go, oh, this feels like, and then there is, the collective input with that as well, which I think is really fun. So yeah.
Definitely. And it's crazy how like I learned actually through Amber, because Amber introduced me to theta healing, and that is basically looking at belief systems and looking at
Mhm.
how a certain belief system creates like a chronic issue in your body. So when Amber and I first met, I used to tell her like, oh, I have headaches all the time, and I was always asking her like, oh, what's the belief behind this? And then I got really into it, but it's so crazy because you're like our cells hold memory, right? And it's so true. Like the things that we tell ourselves, the belief systems that we hold, every physical manifestation, and this is something that I've just like tested over and over again, that every physical manifestation that we have it starts with an emotion. And I just went through like a 2 month period of like chronic low back pain, and I was bitching about it all over the place and like trying to, it's like one of those things where like, you know, it's like when you get so far down the energy rabbit hole and you know what you have to do to get into this other place, but there's still that gray period between like being a human and then knowing what you need to do and putting the time, So I have a friend who's a physical therapist, and she gave me a couple exercises to do, and one of them made a significant difference right away. It was like a squat with like emphasis on my big toe. It made a difference right away, and I immediately lost all of the back pain. And that was enough of a belief, enough of a thought process where I was like, oh, my back pain was coming from my posture. So it fixed it for a while. And then a life experience happened where it prodded at this other thing. The emotion came back and the back pain was back. And no amount of squats with emphasis on the big toe could fix that freaking back pain. Like it was back. Then I was like, oh, great. Like, what is this? And I had to get like all deep in. And then as soon as I was like, oh, this is about forgiveness. This is about a scenario I've been holding on to. This is what I'm still learning for it. Haven't had back pain since, because I got to like the root of the emotion. And um I am really big into like, well, I think we all are, like the elements. The elements are so cool. And Amber and I have been talking a lot about the elements. And recently I've been talking to a friend of mine, Michelle Mix, about water. And she's like, water holds memory, and our cells, like our body is water. And if you think about an emotion that you're feeling, and like if you were to look at the essence of your body as water, and then you go to your horse with your cells holding this water, like, and then they mirror that, they're literally like taking an imprint of your energy. So it's like on a physical level. And if you look at like other, Joe Dispenza, he's talking about it too, how we have like who we present ourselves to the world and how we actually feel inside, and this void in the middle of what we're truly feeling, which is grief, guilt, whatever. And that is what the collective is helping us with. That's what our horses help us with, is like, what is that piece in the middle? And it's really cool. I love the work you do. I love following your posts. I'm going to read one in a minute because it's just great. Because you recognize that piece. And I think there's something really beautiful about being able to introduce, and this is what Amber did to me, and it sent me down a rabbit hole, and I was cursing her for a while, but it's like being able to tell someone, hey, there's this other way of thinking. I'm not going to tell you how to think. I mean, this is my opinion, but I want you to call your power back. And here's this way of thinking, and here's what you can potentially do. And you just plant all these little seeds and you release the responsibility, and you kind of call your own power back and know that you're not, you're not God. And I'm actually going to read your post right now because it's just so relevant to this whole conversation. So Yasmin posted this post, and it's kind of a short one. And I've never read a post on like the podcast before, but whatever, here we are. Lessons in being the tourist, not the tour guide. A phenomenon I'm interested in currently is how everyone has the answers, a new hot take, a silver bullet, the cure to all maladies. It's the feet. No, wait, it's the posture. No, wait, it's the thoracic sling. No, wait, it's the hindquarter engagement. Oh, wait, it's ulcers. Here's the thing. I think it's all of it all at once. It's not existing in a vacuum. It's a unique dance between all of the little things that stack up and snowball, and it ebbs and flows depending on the individual. The fact that we've taken an animal that shouldn't carry our weight and we've stuck them in an environment we're not even thriving in, that piece, can I read that again? We've stuck them in an environment that we are not even thriving in, and we expect it to just work. So while we're all up here in what I can only describe as a positively obscure experience, the interplay between two species, the predator and the prey, if you will, I'd like you to take notice, not simply of the things you want to achieve or the ways in which it's imperfect, but all of those incredible little moments which shouldn't even be possible, and yet we have somehow manufactured that they are. Love it. Do you want to add anything to that?
Um, so yeah, so the tourist, not the tour guide, that was with me for a couple of weeks before I posted that post, and I heard that in um a seminar that I was doing, which was totally unrelated to horses, but it basically spoke to how we almost get in our grooves where we show up, and it's almost like an out of body experience, in that we're just on autopilot and we're doing the thing. Like, I can look at a horse and go, okay, well, they're, extended through their thoracic region and they're slightly flexed through their lumbar region, and this is doing this and this is doing that and this is and I'll go like and I'll do the thing, I'll body work the horse, and they might move better um for a couple of days, couple of weeks, whatever, depending on whether an owner is there to do the thing with their horse to support the posture or whatever. But in getting into that groove where you're on autopilot and you're being the tour guide, you're also not necessarily seeing. And so when you're not necessarily seeing, you have the kind of proclivity to miss bits. And then I started thinking about it more, which is the thing that I do when I'm in the car, when suddenly you're in this spiral where it's like, and then there's this, and then there's that. And then I'm thinking about when I show up to see someone, and they just have this one thing that they want to fix. Oh, his hamstring on the left is just a little bit bigger than his hamstring on the right. And it drives me mad. And I'm like, whoa, there's so much more to this than your horse's hamstring, but okay. Or, you can highlight a bigger picture to someone, and that they have you out because they want you to fix this certain element, but you can't, or energetically I feel I can't, because there's so much more interplay into it. And then also what filtered into that was judgment, because a lot I see a lot of judgment, and I was definitely guilty of it previously, although I like to think that I'm getting better at it, where people are just like, oh, well, you see, he just does this thing, and it drives me wild. And I think, do you know what? We're actually really lucky to be in this situation where we have half a ton of animal that actually tolerates our bullshit because we bring a lot of it to the table. And I think while we're all out here peddling these ideas of how we can fix our horse this time, or how we can make this better, or how we can make that better, and here is this new piece of equipment that will improve your life, or this new bodywork technique, or whatever, actually half the time we're not even meeting our horses where they're at, and we're not even here like this. Just to me it's really bizarre that one day some guy went, you know what, that four-legged creature, I'm going to sit on him and it's going to work. I just think it's wild. And so then within that, I think there can be so much audacity, I think, where we think, I'm going to get on this horse and it's just going to function and it's going to work. And, I have every right to be up here, which I disagree with. And then we're all here bitching and whining because we have a hamstring a little bit bigger on one side than the other, or our horse struggles to turn right. And I think, oh my goodness, can we not just think a bit bigger than this? There's so much more in that post, but also I'm a little bit like, when I'm on social media, I'm the worst for like too long, didn't read. So I also try not to make my post like that, because that's not what I use social media for. But then I also think that's fun. This is my brain. Welcome. Because I think then everyone can interpret the post how they like. And sometimes you get kickback where someone will crop up in the comments and be like, oh, well, yeah, but you know, not all people, or not all horse people, and I think that's fascinating, because when people are cropping up in the comments with another viewpoint, for me it adds another lens of, oh yeah, you know what, they might be right in their lived experience, that might be right. Or they crop up with a viewpoint and go, ha, caught one, found you, this post was for you, maybe you should think on it a little bit more. So thank you, I'm glad that resonated with you, particularly because in the climate at the minute, which we talked about before we got started, I found it really difficult to write lately. And candidly, I found it really difficult to just organize my thoughts into anything that feels like a semblance of coherence, because honestly, it's just not. When you look on social media and you see people all arguing and things, I think, oh, okay, I don't want that. So yeah, I've been kind of hiding a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We keep our last podcast that we just recorded. Did it come out Saturday? Yeah, it did. I was like, it's all meshing together. We talked about like, yeah, the energy of where people are right now. It's just like this kind of chaotic and mildly stressful. And it just feels like to organize thoughts and say, this is exactly how I feel, and I'm going to put this out into the world, and I'm going to surrender to whatever it brings in, and I'm not going to worry about what people say or do. It's like you want to share your journey because there are people out there that think that they're alone, and that piece is vulnerable and also very freeing, but also I think leaves you very open to being, attacked in a way where the people that are afraid to do that, I think, are the ones that are kind of passing judgment on it. And, because we were talking about somebody else that we know that, is very open and gets a lot of lots of shit thrown. And it's like, to be able to stay in your power and say, I'm gonna post anyways and I'm gonna show up anyways, is really like the piece that I feel like people kind of crave to be able to do. Especially social media is so freaking weird, because at what point in time, anywhere on the planet, in any time and space, could we go, here's my story, here's my experience right now, what's relevant to me, and then put it out for like all these like random people to just have their own opinion, and then just type it in, like you don't even know if the person's a real, of like, it could be like a profile that's not even them, just to come bash you. And it's like there's this new level of like bravery that you have to have that is just not even in our DNA. And here we all are like, well, I'm just gonna say it because this is where I'm at and I don't care how you feel. And so I think for the people that are showing up like that, there is this level of like commending and that I want to do, and gratitude that I want to give to the people that are willing to do that, because there are people that are like, oh, thank God, like you said, I finally found you, and this post was for me today. And so I think yeah, I just think that that's such a like where people are at right now and the chaos and the trying to make these decisions and trying to get clear on where you're at. And like, you do need to just sit back and like honor yourselves and the people that are out there doing it, where it's like, yeah, things are wild right now and I'm going to do the things anyways. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think, when you start to curate a following, and in the grand scheme of things, I don't have loads of followers compared to other people, but I also think there's such a responsibility with what you put out there, not only for well-being for the horse, but I think it's for me, the authenticity and the integrity piece is really important. And so, whenever I'm putting something out there, as much as I know that your viewpoint is subject to change as you develop personally, I also think it's this whole you've got followers, you are then afforded the opportunity to help a lot of people or hinder a lot of people. And I also know with that, you can't help everyone with what you say just because it won't resonate. And then also, I see some posts and I think, oh, do you know what? I just don't think this is helpful. And I'm really cognizant of not being that person. So for me, it's how can I invite people to think a little laterally and think a bit broader on the subject. So it's not just about the lack, because there's so many people are feeling so much lack. And I also know, I come back and I reflect on a session and I think, oh well, now I've reflected on it, maybe I could have done this or maybe I could have done that, or oh God, that didn't go quite as well as I wanted that to go. Um, but I also think if I found throughout my career the greatest help I have been, or the most satisfied I've had in my job, is when people have said, thank you, because I can now see there is a much bigger picture than just the things I want to do on my horse's back. And that's profound, because when I stepped away from simply the riding, and like I love riding, but equally, if it's a choice between sitting on a horse that does not want to be sat on, or hanging out with a horse with a cup of tea, or doing things that they want to do on the ground, I know the fulfillment comes from doing the things that we want to do together, rather than the fulfillment. There is no fulfillment with me sat on a horse's back when the horse is like, you could just get off. That would be really good for me
Mhm.
right now. So that's where the satisfaction comes. And if I can post out there where I'm thinking, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and people go, oh, I feel seen, or this is what I did, or this is how my viewpoint has changed, and people go, that's great because I think I'm heading to that place, then that's really fun.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think too, and part of the reason why I've been so excited to talk with you on the podcast is your work is like in so alignment with what the animals have been calling the Great Awakening, which is a shift away from entitlement. It's that shift, and just not to go back to the tour guide, but also to go back to it, because it's that sense of, when we're in that mindset of trying to fix them, we get out of curiosity and we go into, I know what's best for you. And that's simply not true. Like, we are not them. We aren't feeling how they feel. And there are so many things that go unnoticed within our horses that, even just like walking them out of the barn and all those little micro things that, they're spooking at this or they're spooking at that, like, we don't think about like the accumulation of the environment around them and how many things like we dismiss as humans. We're so like, as a collective, and this is kind of a bold statement, but I'm going to say it anyway. Um we are so disconnected from the present moment, and then we expect our horses to be fully present with us, and there's so much that we're missing by looking at what we're trying to fix. And something that I have started encouraging my clients to really think about too is, when you're in that mode of like, I really need to fix this and I can't just appreciate what's right in front of me right now, because like, what's going to happen? Is there going to be an injury, or am I going to be able to ride them? It's like all these forward thinking things. Well, what do you believe is going to happen on the backside of this thing getting better? Like, let's say, they call you out, they they're like, this horse has a hamstring that's bigger than the other. I don't like it because it's stopping me from doing whatever. Well, what are you getting on the backside of that? Let's say I had a magic button and I fix your horse today. What are you going to be? Are you getting freedom? Are you getting joy? Are you getting ease? Are you getting flow? Like, what is it? And why are you using your horse from stopping you having that right now? Like, why are you using your horse as an excuse to feel pain? Because ultimately, that is what a lot of us are doing, is it's like we're using this thing in our horse to mask whatever this pain is. And that is what the Great Awakening is all about, is like shifting away from what's best for another and really looking at us and being like, well, if I believe I'm going to feel joy on the backside of my external environment changing for me, what am I doing right now that's keeping me from feeling that way? Like, why am I? So that's like something fun to add in too, because then people go and they're like, oh yeah, why can't I be happy? What am I doing? And then it's like your horse like takes a deep breath and they're like, oh, thank God I can let go of this kissing spines now, because I was feeling real unsupported on my journey.
That's really a couple of things popped into my mind just then. One of them was I always find it fascinating when I'm having a conversation with someone and they're starting to open up about their own feelings, and the horse is next to them, like yawning and licking and chewing and like relaxing, and then their posture's starting to improve. And I'm like, this is so fun because I haven't even touched your horse yet. This is great. I had one lady, I'm sure she won't mind me sharing, her horse had some real restriction in her hips. And we were going through just a little bit of a static pillar one because the mare was, it will resonate with you guys. The mare had a lot of defensive stuff up, and hips and defensiveness. And I said, how about you might find this easier if you just sort of squat down. And her human went to squat down and she did this weird thing, and it was like, oh, your hips don't move, do they? And as she squatted down, the horse sort of bopped her with her muzzle and just sort of shoved her a bit. So she didn't fall over, but she just sort of overbalanced onto the floor and looked at me dead in the eye and was like, do you see the shit that I have to put up with? And it was hilarious. The way the horse was like, you see this? This is why I have these problems. Um, so that was one thing that popped in, and I've actually just lost the other thing that popped into my brain talking to you about that. But it is that energetic piece, and the finding what it is about ourselves, because I also think as people we do quite like to suffer, and we are quite good at you know giving ourselves stuff rightly or wrongly to suffer about. So that's interesting, and I like that, and I'm definitely going to take that one away with me. That was the other thing. One thing that I like to ask people, and I definitely phrase it more diplomatically than I'm going to phrase it to you guys, but it's, what makes you qualified to ride this horse? And I don't mean that from like oh, I have my VHS stages 1 through 3, and I'm a coach and I'm this, but it's like, what what makes you think that you deserve to be up there? What makes you think that that is a good thing for your horse? What makes you think that this is something that your horse will benefit from? What gives you the privilege of doing that? The other thing that I like to know as well, and this is just purely because it tells me a lot about a person, is what is the least that you could do with your horse and be happy? And I really want to understand what it is that someone wants out of the relationship they have with their horse. And then I want to know why that might be as well. Because again, that gives me quite a lot of information. And I know I've done a lot of soul searching. And for me, honestly, if I could sit in the corner of the paddock and have a cup of tea, if the horse could come over and hang out with me while I do that, brilliant. But if they don't want to, like, fine, I will cry about it, but fine. But that has been the kind of the soul searching that I've done around that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Amber and I haven't ridden very much. We're like both sort of getting back into it, but we went through a space where we just weren't riding and we were just kind of looking at we just keep telling ourselves we're retired. We're like, yeah, we're retired from all the things and we're just hanging out with our horses. And I went through like a soul searching space where I wasn't doing like anything with it. I just didn't have the inspired action. I didn't really want to groom them, didn't really want to do anything with them. And it's so funny when you think about just all the synchronicities, and you made me think of Biggie with the woman with the hips, because Biggie and I have this conflict around haltering, and it's so funny because he pushes into my space when I halter him, and he doesn't prefer me being on the side, but it doesn't matter if I'm like in the front putting the halter on or if I'm on the side, he always boops my heart. And it really fucking pisses me off because he is like, I'm always like, can you stop poking that? Like, I can't keep my heart open. Like, it's such a difficult thing for me. And so I've been on like this journey over the last year of like, how do I get my heart to open? And I did this little, and he's like such a cheeky bastard too, because I just recently, like a couple of days ago, got crystals for all my horses that I was either gonna, I asked them what they wanted me to do with them. They all wanted them in their water. So essentially it was like, what is this tangible thing that I can put an intention into and then place it on their bodies or in their stall or in their water, whatever, and just reaffirm that intention every time I see them, every time I fill up their water buckets, whatever. And his, of course, what like I have like this preconceived notion in my mind of like what I believe all my horses need, and everything. And his was like love. And I was like, oh, of course it is. Like he's always freaking poking at this heart space that doesn't want to stay open and stuff. But it is kind of cool how when you step back from like the what did I used to tell you, Amber, when I quit riding? I was like, I'm breaking up with like the identity. My identity was wrapped up in like what I'm doing with my horses. I was like identifying as someone who rides their horses, and I was like outgrowing that. It's kind of cool how when you dive deeper down your spiritual journey and you love to find happiness inside and you're whole and complete within yourself and you keep working towards that and you don't need your external environment to change or be different so that you can be happy right here in this very moment, all of a sudden you're breaking up with all the things that you used to do. And then it's funny, and I'm curious if you went through this, because I went through a period then where I was like, well, what if I want to ride again? And like, what is that going to look like? Do I even know like what riding is going to look like on the other side of this? And it's just kind of funny the rabbit holes you go down.
Yeah, it is. I think it's interesting. So I talked about how I sort of started my career as a classical dressage student. And I used to compete a lot. Like I would be out, 3 days a week. At one point I had um three horses that I was kind of competing. So it would be maybe each horse did a different show, or maybe I took a couple of them to a couple of competitions. And then I remember at one point I remember recognizing, do you know, I just don't like who I am when I compete. I just don't like how I show up for the horses. And so that was that first sort of, back then, I mean, I think I last competed maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit, maybe 8 years ago. I don't know. But that was that first sort of metamorphosis of me as a person. And then I remember sort of reflecting on that and looking at higher level competition riders and maybe going, do you know, if I have to do that sort of thing, or if I have to do the thing where the horse looks like that, I don't think I want it. Like if I could win an Olympic medal, but the horse would look stressed and upset, and I don't think I don't want that enough. Um, yeah, not at those stakes. And then I know after Falcon, I remember it being like he was a big old lesson in, you don't have to ride your horse to help them to feel better. And that was a big kick up the bum. And it's still that thing where even now it's like an upward spiral of thinking about all of the cues that I could have seen and all of the signals and all of the, where I got to a point where I was just like, you're laying down and I actually just love to sit next to you while you lay down. I don't even want to touch you. And in fact, if you don't want me in your bubble, that's fine. I'll sit over here like 10 meters away from you while you lay down. And that is my cup full. And then I remember thinking, but I'm an equine physiotherapist and people like they pay me so that I can come out and make their horse better so they can go and do the thing and compete and have all of the performance goals. And then I was like, oh, but then I'm just enabling them. And that doesn't feel very nice either. And then I was like, I would like, I do love the idea of riding if the horse would really like to be ridden. So, what does that look like? And what might that look like when I get back on? And then what about tack? Because that feels quite restrictive, and I don't know what and so it's just all of these questions that honestly still bob up. And it's still that thing where if I'm in a situation where I might sit on a client's horse, which is rare nowadays because I figure if they can't sit on their horse, then I have no business sitting on their horse. So I'm just not going to do that. I'd like to give them the tools so that they can find their way with that. But if I am in that situation, I still ask. And if I step up on the block and the horse goes, I'm like, okay, this is fine. Like the horse said no, I'm not going to do it. Um, so yeah, honestly, it still ebbs and flows for me where I'm like, I would really love to feel pretty in a dressage test. And then I'm like, but why? What is the underlying feeling of that? And so basically everything that we talked about probably 10 or 15 minutes ago, where everything is but why. And sometimes it's like, because that would be fun. And that's kind of a good enough answer for me, is that would be fun. But equally, I also know it wouldn't be fun if the horse didn't want me to be there as well. I don't know whether that's answered that, but
Yeah, I think that's so, that question of but why is what drove me to change my entire career and then do something completely different with horses and people, because I always looked at the base level. It always came back to the relationship piece, and it always came back to
Mhm.
us as humans. What we want is connection. Like, we're hardwired to seek out safe connections. And when you said that thing about people really being comfortable in the discomfort, and because I feel like what people don't recognize is very easy to connect with people over problems,
Mhm.
because there are so many and it's so easy to see them, and we're so, I think, trained, air quotes, from a young age to seek out where are the problems and how do we fix them and how do we get away from
Mhm.
discomfort and how do we move into what makes you happy. And um it's interesting that when you start to like disassemble why you're doing the things you do, it's even more uncomfortable than the original discomfort that we thought we were in, because you start to question, like, wait a minute, like, who am I even? And then all of a sudden you're in so much uncertainty that you realize, oh shit. But I think that that's the thing that, Shaylee is talking about with the Great Awakening. And I know that if we're not even talking about humans, that there is that shift happening in the world, and the horse's piece in it is so profound, because I feel like so many people move away from other humans because they have been made to feel unsafe and unseen by them, so they
Mhm.
gravitate towards animals and horses. And then once the horses start bringing up things that are having them question those things, they're like, oh, we can get away from it. Like, it's everywhere. But that's where those beautiful questions come from. It's like, oh, because I want to feel accepted. I want to feel, and you're like, but why? Oh, well, but why is like my favorite question to ask myself and people and
Yeah.
horses. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. And I even, when I'm walking out with my dog and I'll be like, hey, can you come here? And he's like, what's it worth? Like, why should I? What's it worth? And it's with everything. And he does it with my other half as well. My other half, he used to work in the police, and so he can have a very authoritative tone, and the dog will look at him and go, what makes you think you have control over me? And sort of like roll his eyes and trot off in the other direction. And it's so simple, but it's also that thing where you can reflect and go, yeah, why was I asking that? Was there an actual need? Sometimes there isn't a need. Sometimes it's just almost like an autonomic reflex, and maybe we ought to take a look at that. So it, yeah, I just find it all fascinating. And then also the more I bore down into the relationship piece, I think, oh, goodness me, this looks like I need to do some more studying, because I feel like the things that are cropping up now are not the things that I have the toolkit for. So I guess we better roll our sleeves up and do some more work. This could be fun. And also, I might find stuff out about myself that I probably don't like. So we're just going to, buckle up for the ride. Because we haven't been beaten by the energetic stick that's going round enough these days.
You crack me up. I actually just wrote a post about a conversation that I had where one person was using a hoof care provider and it was like the horse just rapidly declined. And then the other person used that same provider and absolutely loved them and their horses are thriving. And of course, my mind is immediately like, oh, that's so interesting. And like, sure, one person isn't like, the end all be all, but then when I looked at the sequence of events that happened for this horse, I'm like, I swear our horses see the bigger picture. Like they're not just looking at a snapshot in time. They're looking at our bigger life experience and what their soul contract is with us. And they always see the growth and they always see the path of least resistance. And this particular horse, the hoof care provider is a very reputable one, and this horse foundered and the feet just continued getting worse and worse and worse. And it was a catalyst for so much change for this horse. He got a new environment, he got new feed, um he got new herd mates. His person is now doing something different with him. It's like this whole, he has a new hoof care provider that is now teaching one of his caretakers. And I thought it was so interesting because it's really easy to like look at the hoof care provider and be like, yeah, you're not the right one for my horse. I'm just going to switch to someone different. But if you think about like like you take yourself with you wherever you go. So you're taking your same old energy and your horse's same old lessons for you, and you're going to this next hoof care provider, and everyone's saying, "Oh, it's so hard to find a good hoof care provider." And it's like my mind is always like, like I see the truth in that, but then I'm also like, it's interesting, like where this is leading you, and then you think of like from the horse's perspective, right? Like, oh, it really fucking sucks that he foundered. Like, that's terrible. And he's going through all this pain. And then I just like hear his little voice, like, yeah, all that pain for like a few weeks. And then now look at me, like, I'm in a new herd. I'm in a new environment. I have food that I like. I'm sound. I like, he's like path of least resistance, baby, but in the moment. So it's kind of cool when you think about like all the connections that are being made through our horses and how every like experience we have is teaching us something, and that momentum is so strong. I'm always challenging people to like test the universe and to test the power of like their own energy, their own thought processes and stuff, because Amber's been talking about the void lately, and like where there's just this messy little bit that you're in the middle of. And I feel like I'm in that right now because I was telling her, I don't believe in anything right now. Like, I am so skeptical that I don't even think I believe in anything. And the problem is, I believe so strongly in everything that I can become so skeptical about anything. And she's just like laughing at me and looking at me. And I'm like, so I think about like, for example, like the chemicals in our water and the toxins in our water. And I'm like, so I know that there's this machine, and this machine says that it does a certain amount of things for the water. And I know that if I fully believe in this machine and I fully put all of my energy into it, I can become healthier, happier based on my belief systems around this machine. But if I get the machine and I'm like, oh, I don't know, I don't think this thing is going to work. Like then you just spent a bunch of money and it's not working for you because of your belief system. And it's kind of funny how and I don't know if this is just because it's like my human design, and I'm curious, like if you can relate to this at all, but I always have a question about something, and it's not that I'm like, I don't feel like I'm skeptical, but it's kind of funny because I feel like I always have to test every single thing. And then it makes me like stuck in this place of like, I can't believe anything until it's like I need a signier sign. That's usually what we say. And then it brings in all the signs from the universe, but then you go through more lessons. It's terrible. It's great, but it's terrible.
Yeah, I'm that person where I definitely do the intuitive, um, believe the things, see the signs, and then I'm also like, cite your sources though. Like, where's the evidence? And then that also really irritates me because I also see the holes in that too. So yeah, that definitely resonates, and I think it's that thing of, from a scientific perspective, we would call that like a placebo. Is it the energy you put into it that makes you feel better by proxy, or is it the thing's actually doing the thing it says it's going to do? And maybe your belief is the thing that makes that, work, or maybe it's the actual thing. I've said thing way too many times, but you get where I'm going with this. And then a bit of me is like, do you know what? If you're happy, does it really matter? Like, if you believe that giving your horse 3 kisses on the forehead before you leave is going to help to keep them happy and healthy overnight, and each morning you come up and your horse is fine and you're like, yes, bias confirmed, brilliant, then maybe there isn't a problem there. But what you just said did make me think about, I've got a very good friend who is very into her, just all of the things that she can do to help her horse to feel better, to the point where it almost feels a bit frantic. So it might be the horse has got a back on track rug, with the infrared technology, and then they also have red light leg wraps, and then they also have magnetic boots, and then they also have like cold hosing for any kind of hot spot that's there, and then they have this and that and the other, and it's almost like, at what point, where is the line between intention and helping the horse, allowing a therapeutic benefit, and then also kind of getting in the way of them kind of their being and their existing? And then that, I think, can reflect on us, certainly with what you just said then, Shaylee, with the thing that you have for your water. But then that can be distilled down. We've got the molecules in the water, and then we've got, are you getting direct sunlight into your eyes? And then are you eating processed foods or not? And then are you doing yoga? But oh no, you haven't done resistance training, and resistance training for women is, and then I'm feeling a little bit stressed, but then actually a little bit of stress is good. Oh, but when does that tip over from eustress to distress? And I just don't know. And maybe I should wrap myself in that infrared rug, and maybe I should put the LED lights on. And I just, this is my burning question, which kind of ebbs and flows all of the time, is how much is too much and how much is just enough, and how much of it's energetic or not. Yeah.
Yeah, that resonates. That's definitely my daily life. And my husband, like all of that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely me. I'm like, I resonate with all of that. And I'm always like doing little things. And my husband jokes around with me all the time because he knows how extra I am, because he'll be like I got a rash on my arm the other day after being sick, and it was just like a little thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, so many lessons. And he's like, couldn't it just be a rash? And I was like, no, it never is. Like, there's always something more. But his like favorite thing to say to me, he has two things that he says to me, and I hear them in my head more and more. And one day maybe they'll stick, but he's always like, can't you just choose happiness? Like he says that all the time. Like, just choose happiness. Like if I'm saying anything where he feels my energy, he's like, no, no, no. And then he also says, don't question it, just love it. So when I get into like that question phase, or I'm like, how did this happen? How did we bring this? And I get into like the how and the why and stuff. And he'll be like, don't question it, just love it. Like he tries to bring me back into the moment. But it's kind of interesting because when you are fully embodied and fully in the moment, all of those questions totally go away. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, have you guys noticed that? Like when you're just in the moment and you're like living your day-to-day breath by breath life, we have no questions. We're just like being, and it's great, but we only stay there for like 5 seconds.
Yeah. No thoughts, just vibes. No thoughts, just vibes, which is something that I really like. And then, so I felt this quite a lot, when I feel that being in the moment thing, it feels for me like the lens is just coming into focus. And at the minute, it's like it's just coming into focus. And just as it goes into focus, it all goes out of focus. And I'm like, oh, that was not that. But yeah, I definitely agree. When you're in the moment, it's so much easier, I feel, to make positive decisions when you are in that present state because there isn't that overthinkingness around it. And then coming back to what I do for work, when people ask me questions, and I'm like, I don't know, because there are many options. There are many options. You could do this with your horse, but then on the other hand, you could do that, or you could do this. Or if you did this, it might have a positive effect in this regard and a negative effect in that regard. So, really, what I would like them to do is I can lay out all of the possibilities and then they choose, but then you lay out all the possibilities and they go, oh, before it was just a simple yes, no, and now I have the pressure of it and I don't want the pressure of it. As a practitioner, I'm like, well, I don't want the pressure of it either. I would like you to make a decision and I will support you with the decision that you make within reason.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is like that is like for me what I keep talking about. And I don't know if energetically it's just what's happening right now, but the void is that like, but this and then this and then this, and it's like the answer to that is when you are in there is not to find the answer. That is not the time to make the decision. That is not, you go so much into a masculine energy of like, I'm going to problem solve this. I'm going to figure it out. What's the right choice? And then you're going into this like doing when really what you need to do is like pull back into the like being of like, I don't need to know right now, where can I just connect? Where can I be in the moment? Where can I then just allow that answer of which is the right decision to just be dropped in? And I was talking to my boyfriend is such an overthinker. Like he is never not thinking. And I watch it and it almost makes me, because we've started writing together, and he goes so far into the future of all of the things that can go wrong. And I'm so opposite where I'm like, what are all the things that can go right? So I find myself like the horses do for people. It's just relationship in general. Like we have people in our families and our that we work with, our clients, our horses, our partners, whatever. It's like this piece is asked to come to the surface when you're interacting with someone like that, whoever it is. And I found that because he is so much that way, I want to be so much more the other way because I'm a little bit stubborn and obstinate, right? So I'm like, no, like, so it's great because it's keeping me in this, like, but what can go right? So it's been great for me where I'm like, do we really need to think about this right now? What happens, but why, right? Is the question.
Yeah.
Why do we need to think about all the things that can go wrong right now? And so when he goes there, I'll be like, Nancy, like negative Nancy. So I'm like, Nancy, need to do this right now. When we rode yesterday and his horse is like, he doesn't ride very often and his horse is quite literally a unicorn. And I didn't know. I've been taking care of the horse, but had not ridden it because there were some things that needed to be addressed. And so we've ridden twice together. I look at this horse like, you are just here for it. He is like, I'm here for this person and this human, and I will take care of all the things. I'm telling Shayla, I'm like, there is no reason that man did not get bucked off like several times yesterday. Meanwhile, my horse is consistently asking me to stay in my body because we don't know what's going to happen in the next moment. He's like riding a little red dragon, and I got off many times because it was like, but why do I need to be on you right now? I don't. You are overwhelmed in anticipation of what I will ask you to do when I just want us to just chill. So it's like, I love the idea of everything that's happening in our life that's taking us into this overthinking, this void space of chaos, where it's like, oh, but why do I need to figure it out right now in this moment? Can I just be in the moment? Can I connect with the earth? Can I connect with this horse and have these little sips of pressure being released and resistance being released and being like, oh, this is why we're here. We're here just to be. We're called human beings for a reason. And it just is so interesting that we are constantly like, I want to be a human do. Like, but how
Yeah.
when it's like, oh, everything around us is constantly inviting us back into this, like just the space of being. And it's so hard for us to stay there. It's like, that is like the lesson in our existence on this planet, our soul's journey is like, how much can you just be? And why is it so difficult? It's like, God, because it's
Yeah.
so fun to be there, you know? Wow.
It's so easy to be taken there as well. But I remember when I started to strip some layers back and try to be a bit more being rather than doing. And I was living in a town at the time, and I was driving through the town to my house, and I thought, I'm just like overwhelmed and overstimulated by all of this. My goodness, the more I have reduced things, the more oversensitive, like, and I thought, I've broken myself. And then I was like, no, 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 no. We haven't broken ourselves. This is not what this is. This is actually the fact that you were not designed to deal with all of this stimulus all of the time, which I think is where we can be so easily pulled around. Like I noticed my new favorite nervous tick is whenever I have an intrusive thought that I don't like, I'll pick my phone up and then I'm like, ah, you did it again. Instagram does not need to be looked at for the 4700th time in an hour. No, think the thought and let it go. But I have a question, Amber. Can you give me um a quick info on the void? Because this is new to me today, and so I'd like to understand it a little better.
Yeah, I don't so this always stems from where I'm at, right? Like if
Yeah.
I know something I'm gonna teach, and me and Shaylee talk about this all the time. Anytime we come up with an offering, or I have this event coming up in October, and I've had this experience where I had a mentor of mine talk about the void, and I was like, the void sounds so dark and empty, and that doesn't feel like what I'm in. What it feels like I'm in a freaking tornado. I'm in a fire. I am in like there's all these things, right? And she was like, no, it turns into that because there is so much. And you just start searching for things and you can't find them. You don't know what the next step is. And it's like everything around becomes sort of uncertain, and there is like these questions and there's decisions and there's this pressure, and it stemmed from, for me, from, I think also energetically it's what's going on, but this event and also several events that we've, planned and tried to put out there, and we're like, why isn't it working? Like why isn't it is as easy as it has been? And then you shift into this like we have to figure it out, when we all know, because we know that is not what we have to do. We don't have to do, but so it's like, what is this push and this pull? And then I recalled having that time with her where she was like, this is not the time to make those decisions. It's like almost like relationships, partnerships, anything that happens in your life that pokes at you, that brings to the surface your limiting beliefs you have about yourself, for you to go, do I actually resonate with this? And the event that I'm doing in October is the art of equine alchemy, and the online portion of it is these 3 stages of transformation. And the first one is the fire. It is the void. It is the part of you where all this stuff comes in to burn away what isn't actually true about yourself. So when you think of, oh, all of this stuff is happening to me, this sucks, this is hard, this is, if you can remember, oh, if I can just become reconnected with earth, reconnected with myself, reconnected with whatever I need to pull me back into the moment, that is when what's not true can kind of melt away, or you can at least identify this piece of, most of the time I feel like it's identity. Like I'm so tied into these events I'm doing, I'm tied into my label as who am I, if everything fails and falls apart, that I'm trying to do, who am I still, and it's like, what are you trying to, so I feel like in the void, it is the opportunity, which sometimes if you don't recognize that's what happens, it takes you into overthinking, panicking, life is falling apart. And sometimes that's what manifests, but still, even that is what has to manifest for this truth to be seen, right? And so the void being this opportunity to look at these limiting beliefs that are holding you back from going to the next level, from actually slowing you down from the partnerships that you want, the relationships you want, the offerings that you want to bring into the world, and so I think just the awareness of, this is what this is. This void is for me. This is what this is. And I think people don't learn that. You get kind of stuck in it, like nothing I'm doing is right. Who am I? And instead of being like, oh, actually, who am I through this, on the other side of it, without the things I need so much. Um, and so that for me is the void, and it's the fire. It's that first step of transformation, is you have to have all of that to burn away. And I think the transition, us as a collective in humanity, which the horses are absolutely helping with, and why we talk about it is because that is our world, right? It's our piece of this for humans, is, you know, then what? Like you burn all of this away, and what are you left with? And it's like you are exactly where you need to be in all time and space. And how can we accept ourselves more, just the way we are, versus always trying to, do the next thing and integrate the next thing, and how can I learn more? It's like, when do we get time to just like, oh, the only place it's going to feel good with all this chaos is just to stop it. And I don't feel like we're taught we're allowed to do that. I think we're labeled as lazy, or, oh, you have all these things to do and you're just going to go lay down on the earth. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You really going for lizard time right now? Come on.
Yeah. And um so I think that there's a big collective shift for humans in general. I mean, you just look at the climate of politics, and like
Yeah.
all these dynamics are kind of falling away, where we focus on what we focus on because it's why we're here. We've chosen to integrate the horses into these healing journeys, but it always comes back to the relationship piece. And I love that, like, that's kind of where I went, and I was like, oh, like, I don't even know what to do with this, because people are like, no, I don't need the relationship. I need to know how to get to here and here. So, it leaves you in a place where you start to disassemble, but you can't have anything that you want without that piece. And it does come back to relationship with self,
Mhm.
which comes
Mhm.
back to when you're in that fire, when you're in that void, like, who am I and why am I doing what I'm doing? And do I need to be doing it? Can I just accept myself for where I am right now? And if I can't, why not? How come? You know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, and I think that is why people resonate with that stuff so much. Is, for me, it's what started happening, where I was like, oh, I need to figure this out. And I was like, hold on. My mentor once told me that is not the time to do that. So I've just pulled back now. I'm like, I'm just gonna go sit on my horse. I'm just gonna go ride and see, what wants to come in, instead of pushing so hard. Because what happens if I don't right now? Freaking nothing. What happens if I fail?
Mhm.
What happens if nothing works out? It's like, I don't know. It's always been fine before. I'll figure it out. So yeah, it's just like that constant cycle, of what's left over after. And then all of a sudden it's like, then you get up leveled, but that's us
Yeah.
as humans. We do that so many times. But I feel like,
Yeah.
you know, every time we all go through this, it's like, oh, wow, now I'm here. Now I figured it out. And then until you don't, until you don't again.
Yeah.
But like that part when you get to the other side, you're like, oh my God, everything's working, and we're just going to celebrate and be so happy and feel so good in this. I think that's all what we're striving for, and that's how you get there, is these, like, we can just remember it's these uncomfortable, like, phases is what gets us there. Then we can not be so stuck in it. It's like, okay, I can just move through this. I can just remind myself every day, this is part of it. Whew, this is part of it. Oh, I'm so grateful. This is part of it. But I think the biggest piece is that you find other people that you like admire, and that you're watching, that goes back to even the beginning, when people say, I'm so excited to be talking to you guys, and we're like, really? Like, but why? When it's like, to find the community of people that are doing that work with you, you remind yourselves that, oh, you're not alone, and this is part of the experience. You know what I mean? And I think that's the funnest part about the podcast. It's the funnest part about every event we create and every offering that we do online. It's like, because you just get to be reminded of this entire community of human beings doing it with you, and then you don't have to do it by yourself. So I love that piece.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And also, never have I ever felt more seen in 5 minutes of conversation. So thanks. Because it was like, yes, this is it. This is what I'm going through right now. And also, yes, when you were like, oh, this feels like too much friction. I think I'm just gonna stop and just wait. I'm like, yes, of course, that is it. Because I'm also caught in that, we look at hustle culture online, which makes me feel a bit sick actually. And you've just got to want it enough, and if it's not working, you're not trying hard enough. And then a bit of me is like, oh yeah, well, sometimes it's just not working because it's not meant to work right now or ever. So that's been the thing that I've been also thinking about, with the never ending thoughts in my head of, is it not working, or is it just actually that you need to slow your roll because you've been on a hell of a roll right now, and you just actually need to pause and take stock, and then the momentum will come again when the momentum's meant to be there. So no, that was awesome, thank you.
Yeah. And I think too, for people that are teaching, is remembering that if I'm going through this right now, it is because I'm probably supposed to teach it. And I really need to be able to embody that
Mm.
lesson so that when you're holding the space for people that are like a few steps behind and you're like, oh yeah, I was just there. It's fine. It's going to be fine. You hold the energy of you are going to be fine instead of, oh God, I don't know either, but it is good to have those people that can be like, we don't know, and go, but we're all going to be fine. Right. It's like, yeah, we're fine. But it is for teachers, for people that are holding, doing whatever we're doing. That is the piece where you have to be able to hold space. And holding space is like, you're not looking at people and horses as if they are victims and as if they're not going to get better. And then holding the space of even if they don't get better, there is a reason for that as well. And I don't want to force anything and try to change anything that is supposed to happen. Because while you can witness people having a very hard time and be empathetic, there is this line where you have to be able to also hold the energy of, but it's also how it's supposed to be and all is well,
Yeah.
and not get
Yeah.
too sucked into it. Because even as facilitators and people teaching, you can get very drained by that. And that's not supporting anyone either.
Mm.
It's like that fine line of I was okay, I am okay through this. And so you can hold the space for others to be like, you will be okay. Even if you don't say it, you know what I mean? Like you always know when you're sharing your story with someone who's like, ooh, like, oh, poor, or poor you, like you can feel
Yeah.
someone feels sorry for you. And that's one thing that I think in the very beginning of talking to Shaylee, I was like, do horses ever do like, I don't feel like I've ever sat with a horse and had them hold space for people in any sessions where I felt like they felt sorry for the person. And she's like, no, they don't, that's not even a thing. And I'm like, so we do that. And to them, they're like, what is this foreign, weird vibe that you've got going on with me?
But, but
You
then
know,
do you think poor you is a reflection on the person that's being told poor you, or do you think that's a reflection on the the person who's saying poor you? Because I I wonder sometimes whether it's our feelings can make people feel uncomfortable. And for me, I've learned to be in this moment in time at least, if someone's feeling emotions, I've been pretty good at learning to sort of go, yeah, okay, so I can hold space for you, but this is definitely a you issue. This is not a me issue, and I'm not here like poor you, like I understand, and that's it.
yeah, I think it's a reflection of the person, the feeling, the poor you that makes the others uncomfortable, which is why it's so powerful to have facilitators that don't have that, where it's like I see you're struggling and that does suck, but I'm not like getting sucked. The poor you feels like, oh my gosh, how can I help you, how can I fix you, you're so broken, where
Yeah.
you're giving, you're letting it take from you. And I can't remember, there was someone who talked about the two different terms and difference between caretaking and caregiving, where it's like
Mhm.
the caretaking is like the poor you and it's taking from you, it's draining you. It's like you really feel like the responsibility of, if I don't help you with this, then somehow it's a reflection of my failure to support or whatever. When the caretaking is like, I'm taking care of myself right now, and I'm also going to hold the space for you, but nothing is going to be taken from me. This isn't my journey. And I can create the container, and your experience is going to be your experience. It's even like you offering these different options of, here are all the things you could choose, but I'm not going to choose for you. It's about tapping back into what is right for you and your horse, even. And that goes back to doing the work for yourself so you can tap in and receive the information, because only you know your horse. And so you can have a list of facilitators, but it's about which one is right for me and my horse. Intuitively, you have to tap into that. You know what I mean? And so taking your power back in that way is why I feel like it's so important, because at the end of the day, you are the guardian that knows your horse so well. And so you can receive information from like Shaylee or like me or you, or in any, you can receive the education and the support, but it's like at the end of the day, you have to be the one that ultimately makes the decision. And it has to come from, okay, can I sit and be quiet and just receive? Like, who is the next step? What is the next thing? And then also using a lot of grace with yourself if it doesn't work out, because there was some learning in that you needed also. So yeah, being
Mhm.
human is freaking hard.
Yeah, that raised something for me, which was a post that I nearly posted but didn't, because I just thought I don't trust that this is going to be received in the way in which I'm intending it, which is when people develop that fix it mindset for their horse. And the question I have, and I truly believe that we are all people who would like the best for our horses. And then there's also that question that cropped up, which was, are you wanting to fix your horse because you want your horse to feel better, or do you want to fix your horse because you can't deal with the feelings that it's calling up for you right now? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I wonder whether Shaylee might like to weigh in on that one, or
No, that is like that is so true. And it's kind of funny because I have that with one of my like my longest relationship with one of my horses. It is just that where it's like, oh, I need to fix him because I get so much pain like out of looking at him when I have like a perception of like, oh, he's not thriving. And it was funny going back to that crystal thing. And I feel like he's such a mirror. Like we've been together like 10 years now, maybe more. And he's such a mirror for me. He's like the reason I'm an animal communicator. Like everything I've done he's just been such a catalyst. And his fucking word was peace. And I was like, of course it is, because I just can't give you that peace. Like it's so like it was just such a like a reality check because that is so true. Like and I think it varies within each horse and person relationship because I can look at all of my other horses in my barn and something can be going on and I can want them to be better for them. Like I'm like, "Oh, for you, like I would like this." And then I'm not also attached to the outcome. Like, here's some things that I learned could like help you to be better. Take it or leave it. I'm not attached to what's happening. You know what I mean? Like you are you, you chose this body, like, I'm supporting you in the best way I can. With Kip, no, I'm like, you cannot be downhill right now. You cannot have like these feet. I just look at him and I'm like, oh, this is and I think it's like, because I have created a story around him, right? Where I'm like, you are a reflection of me. And so I'm like, well, you can't be tight and you can't be grumpy and you can't be this. And I constantly have to check myself all the time. And now I love that I'm doing this crystal thing and that he slapped me in the face with this peace word because I'm like, oh, great. Like, that's exactly what we need. That's exactly what he needs when he's around me. And it's not like I'm constantly looking at him, or he just said, yes, I am. All right. I'm constantly looking at him and trying to figure out because he's been such a spiritual teacher for me. But yeah, I think it's different with I love that question. And I think you should ask every single client that because it's so relevant. And then most of us aren't thinking that, like even me just now thinking that and then linking it to peace. I'm like, oh yeah, fuck, I am doing that. Like that's so true.
yeah, so now maybe I'm going to post it, and then when I create like a social media shitstorm, I'm going to inbox you two and be like, "This is your fault," and then you're going to reply like, "Maybe
We're
this was a
fine. Keep
lesson that you
going.
had to learn."
Let's do it. All right. I love it when the conversation feels complete. We all just look at each other and we're like, yep,
Well,
that felt
I was
good.
like filing through like my things. I was like, nope, it feels complete. Um, I guess we will ask you, even though it is being released. I feel like I want to release this one sooner than later, actually, for some reason. I know we have a
Mhm.
kind of a fat stockpile of guest podcasts that we do need to put out that have been just, we keep trying to throw them out in the middle, and it's just quite a few, but this one might feel relevant sooner than
I
later
know.
because we're talking about the void. um, so is there anything right now, that you have going that you want to share with people? Um,
Hmm. That's an interesting one. So I have two online courses, and I feel like with my online courses, I create more problems than answers for people, but then I also kind of like that as well. So my first course is the fundamentals of horse posture, and really and truly, both of these courses were created. I'll get to the other one in a bit, but they were both created because I was fed up with coming out with my silly physio analytical brain, looking at this horse's posture and being like, well, no wonder this horse is kissing spines. Have you seen the shape of his back? Um, so rather than get cross and angry, I thought, well, I could create a resource that's just online for life that people can dip into where they can just learn a little bit about posture. And it's not for giving people answers, but it's helping people to train their eye so that they can see, so they can go and meet their horse where they're at. So that's one online course that I've got. And the next course is the fundamentals of exercise programming, which I kind of have a love-hate relationship with because I don't like the name exercise programming. And I also feel like a lot of people don't like it either. But really, this course is, I think, going to be like my life's work, really. It's an ever developing course, which is essentially everything that I feel people need to know before they get in the arena to work with their horse. And it's a course that's growing and growing and growing each month. So we've got some of the theory stuff in there. And at the minute I'm on like the current theme is train your eye. So it's training your eye to how horses are moving, and training your eye to other things, like tack fit, training your eye or developing the skill sets around how you need to show up as a human, how you can regulate yourself. So there will be some breathwork pieces and the things that people ought to be bringing to the conversation. And then eventually I will add in some actual exercises and things that people might like to implement as well. But it's really just I was getting frustrated when people wanted me to build exercise plans for their horses, which I don't do because I don't think that's ethical for many reasons, which we talked about in the beginning. So it's more, how can I give people tools so that they can go and work it out for themselves? So those are two online courses. They are up there for life. The fundamentals of exercise programming is just it is its own entity and it's done now. The fundamentals of horse posture, I can't remember whether I said that or exercise programming, but the exercise programming course, there's a monthly webinar that goes on and that will just kind of continue until I think I've got there, which will probably never happen. So yeah, it's just growing. They can be found on my website, which is www.yasminstuartequinephysio.com, which is the longest website in the world, but it's there now.
Perfect. Well, we'll put the link in the show notes for people so they don't have to remember. They can just click on it and find you. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us. That was so much fun.
Thank you. It was, yeah, so much fun. And I feel really pepped up now. So thank you so much. I've got like a little crumb of inspiration, so I might go right.
Nice.
So thank you.
Yeah, that's great. All right, then we will chat. We will chat in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, look forward to it.